I bought this Skyline for $10,000 on Facebook Marketplace. And since then, I've spent thousands more trying to bring it back to its former glory, but it has been a rough challenge. Now, as you guys know, I bought this car as a non-runner, and when I pulled the motor out of this thing, we found a conrod coming out of the side of the block.
Oh my god!
Bruh. This was the first time I'd ever seen anything like this. We continued to pull the motor apart, and yeah, it was not savable. Now, to allow us to be able to move the car to get painted, to get work done, I decided to get another RB20 and install it into the R32 Skyline. We got the car running. We were able to take it to the paint shop, and now the car looks like this. However, guys, it's time to pull the motor again, because I'm going one step further. I'm chasing ponies. In the previous video, I finished assembling most of the fully forged RB25 DET that we'll be installing into the R32 Skyline, installing the billet oil pump gears, installing the timing belt, painting the valve covers, and now it looks like this. They're a much more capable platform, being a 2.5 litre, they're also much more reliable, and they came out of the R34 GTTs from 1998 to 2003. Some people say that the RB20s sound much better, and I do have to agree, but I'm sorry, we're going to be throwing this thing in the bin. So it is finally time to start taking out the RB20. The RB20 served its purpose in allowing us to move the car from A to B, but it's time to pull it out for good and install an RB25. The first thing we're going to do is make sure that we don't ruin anything, so I started by taking off the bumper. The bumper's just held in by 2 screws, one on each side and a few clips in the middle. Very easy to work in these cars, especially because they're like 30 years old. They're put together like Lego. After removing the front bumper, I removed each corner light on each side. These are just held in by one Phillips head, and it just slides out and you take off the clip. I then removed the headlights as well, because we don't want to hit anything while taking this engine out. And then I removed the battery and set it down aside, right next to my friend Imran. I then went ahead and started taking off all the intercooler piping, everything going to the turbo and the engine. I really don't like these side-fed intercoolers. Although everything's compact, they're very annoying to remove all the different couplings. Everything's very hard to get to. Now, we're not going to be using this anymore, so if you want to grab it, then hit me up on Instagram. So I've now taken off the intercooler piping, the inlet, pod filter, all the piping down here, the intercooler as well. That's all gone now. We're just starting to remove everything on this side. I think that's most things on that side. We need to remove this throttle cable, as it's going to be relocated on the other throttle body. With the throttle cable out of the way, I started to remove all the vacuum lines, such as the brake booster going to the inlet manifold. I then took off the crossover pipe and then jacked up the car because most of the other stuff was underneath. Although I just put brand new transmission fluid into the transmission not long ago when we put this engine in, I decided to drain it anyway because we're going to be using different fluid. For some reason, I torqued up the transmission drain bolt really tight, so it was kind of tricky to remove. Holy crap! What have I done? I then took off the downpipe, which was held in by 3 bolts going to the back of the turbo, and then removed the power steering lines. Now, there are 2 power steering lines going to the power steering, one for the rear hiker setup, because this car actually has rear wheel steering. Ideally, I do want to delete all of this, just to sort of make the engine bay a little bit cleaner, but for now, we're just going to remove everything and we'll sort that out later. For some reason, this power steering fluid smells like fish.
What kind of fish?
It smells like...
Omega-3?
No, just like straight salt tin tuna. I then disconnected the fuel lines. The feed line and the return line are both in the exact same spot. And then I had the boys help me take off the bonnet. This was probably the most stressful part of doing this engine swap. Because we just got a fresh respray, we don't want to destroy anything. So we had to be extra careful removing the bonnet. Oh, is it still in gear? Okay guys, we're making crazy progress. We've taken off the AC compressor pipes, the power steering lines, the fuel, disconnected the tail shaft. We just need to now remove the electrical stuff, intercooler, everything. We're now ready to take out the radiator, and that's basically the last thing that we need to do in order to pull the engine. There's a shifter that you need to remove, the shifter stem that you actually hold. You need to take that out before you pull the motor as well. Lachlan and I found out the hard way. It was very hard to take out on his R32 when we kept that shifter stick in there, but let's continue doing this. What else is connected, mate? What is that? It's everything.
Straight up. Ew.
We are now ready to pull the motor. We've got everything off. Man, it is hot as today. Just got Imran to move his JZX90. All the boys just rock up to suss what I'm doing. Damn. Hey, man.
What do you want?
Yeah, you good? I've been avoiding doing this for a while because of the heat. It is so hot. Summer in Australia sucks usually, especially in Melbourne. For some reason it gets hotter here than even further up close to the equator, but yeah, she's ready to get out. She's ready to get pulled, mate. With the help of my friend Imran, we painfully removed the old RB20. I decided to take the transmission out with the engine because it seems like that's just the easiest way to do things. But man, it was a hot day, so that just made this even more difficult. It's pretty scary knowing that the entire engine is just held up by a chain and 2 bolts, but usually that's how we do it in the garage because yeah, we don't have hoists yet at the shop. We'll be moving into the shop properly soon. We just need to get hoists there, so that's why we're doing everything still at home. Alrighty guys, the motor has now been pulled. It's now a few days in the future, and I've replaced Imran with the infamous Mr. Lachlan.
The RB expert.
What do you think about the RB20?
Oh, a junk. Chuck in the bin.
Oh, so you like the 25?
Straight in 25 all day. You got shit everywhere.
It's not that bad.
Had a bit of a cheeky monster, have you?
Nah, it's not mine.
This one day I'll do this to my RB. Like the intake, turbo bigger than my head.
Yeah, you reckon?
Very jealous. Very jealous of what you're doing here.
Do you reckon it's actually gonna work? Be honest.
It'll work. For how long? That's the question.
I'm not really confident myself, but we'll see what happens, huh? First time I've ever done anything like it. So Lachlan was saying in order to delete some of the Hikers stuff, because we are not going to be running Hikers, what do you have to do? What's the process?
It depends what sort of deletion you want, whether you're running the Hikers power steering or you run a non-Hikers pump.
Yep.
So yeah, depends what you want to do.
If I didn't explain before, Hikers is essentially the 4-wheel steering that these cars come with from factory. There's actually a steering rack in the back that moves the back wheels depending on where you steer the front wheels. So it's got 2 systems, one for the front steering rack and one for the back. And because we don't want to run the back, mainly because with more power, what does that mean? The wheels are gonna sort of like come out more.
I think they just start flexing and it becomes a bit how you're going, bit sketch.
So you want to delete it basically with more power?
I think you just delete it because they don't work. Like, does yours even work?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
Probably sell it for a bit of money then.
But yeah, like you can tell, like the engine bay is just covered with these Hikers lines. Like we've pulled plenty motors and it never looks this hectic in the engine bay, does it?
Hikers is just overcomplicated.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
Snip, delete time, I think.
We're also going to have to convert all the fuel lines as well to -6 or -8 fittings. You guys might be happy to know that we are retaining AC, so I will still try to retain that with the RB25. It's never worked for me on this car, but Australian summers suck, don't they?
That's not too bad. Most of my cars don't have AC. It is what it is, man.
Anyway, I've got Lachlan here because he's going to help me pull the gearbox off, because the RB25 gearbox, she's a heavy girl. Big Bertha gearbox. I think they're like 100 kilos, are they?
No, they're not that heavy.
To remove the gearbox off the RB20, there's just a bunch of bolts holding the bell housing to the engine itself. You remove those, you remove the starter, and having a mate there really helps because these gearboxes can be pretty difficult to remove. They're also quite heavy. The RB25 gearbox weighs a lot more than the standard RB20 gearbox. But yeah, we're lucky having the RB25 gearbox because this will hold the power that the RB25 should make. Gearbox is now off. Looking pretty nice. We're now going to start removing all the accessories like the AC compressor, the power steering pump, and we're just going to start putting it onto the RB25. We're going to start off with the AC compressor. A few more bolts holding the compressor to the bracket. So I just pulled the engine mount off the RB20 because apparently we need to use the RB20 mounts on the RB25 in order to fit it into the R32. Most manifolds require you to chop the engine mount ever so slightly. So you can see the manifold is touching the engine mount right there. So looks like we are gonna have to notch it out just around there. And there you go, the engine mount is touching the manifold. So we are gonna have to chop it out. We're also just cleaning the brackets, AC compressor bracket and the power steering bracket. And we're gonna put a fresh coat of paint on these two brackets so that it all matches everything on the RB25. But I'll get back to you in a bit. So on most of these manifolds, I've heard that you do have to modify the engine mounts. And yeah, we're just notching it out ever so slightly with an angle grinder and then cleaning it up with a rotary tool. The metal's really thick and I was getting sparks all over my legs. But guys, remember, safety is #1 priority. Just notched the engine mount out, and for anyone curious, this is how much you got to take out. It now fits up with the exhaust manifold. We're just going to put a lick of paint on this, as well as the brackets, and then put everything back on. Everything's now painted. It's looking pretty nice. Dry to the touch. We're going to put these on, mount everything to the motor. So this was the exciting part, installing everything onto the RB25. I did have to take the exhaust manifold off to install the engine mount. There's not a crazy amount of room, but this SDF manifold fits really good to the RB25, and I made sure to tighten up every bolt tight because I won't be coming here again. We also installed the power steering bracket. We still need to find an RB25 pump as well. I then installed the AC compressor bracket along with the AC compressor itself. That's just held on by 4 bolts. And then I installed the tensioner pulley for the AC compressor. This is just a pulley that goes on the AC compressor bracket. There's a few different washers that you got to use. You got to make sure to put everything in order, and that's a lot more of the engine assembled. Okay guys, we have now put a lot of the RB25 together. I decided to paint the covers as well, like a matte black. And although there's some damage on the cover, I think it still looks pretty good. Imran behind the camera reckons that I should go to a clear cover.
Why?
I don't know.
Have nice belts.
I don't know, I feel like it's
A bit gimmicky.
a cop bait.
True.
Yeah, we got the AC compressor on. We got the harmonic balancer, not torqued to spec yet because we got to do that when the engine's off the stand. I believe that the harmonic balancer gets torqued down to like 300 newton meters or something. Still need to put the power steering pump on and the alternator. But yeah, the engine's looking pretty hectic. I am. So the next thing that we got to do, guys, is remove everything out of the engine bay. We got to delete all this Hikus crap, all these lines. We got to take out the master cylinder for the brakes, the clutch. Need to just remove all the wiring because we're going to be painting the engine bay at home DIY style. So we're going to get to doing that. It's going to take a bit of time. Ash is working on his Civic. Don't know why he's bothering.
The camera did.
So while he's doing that, we're going to do this.
Go in the Civic.
Ready to upgrade for the Civic? Bro, look.
It's not gonna fit.
It's as big as the whole motor.
If anybody wants to buy a VTEC, hit me up.
Hit him up. He's selling that. So because the RB25 looks so pretty, we want to make the engine bay look pretty as well. And because we're going to paint it, it means we need to remove everything out of the engine bay. We started off by removing the bottles in the engine bay. These are pretty ugly, and we'll probably relocate them. Oh, these plugs are crusty as. Usually, when you work on cars, you want to use absolutely no force. But when things are this old, gotta sort of force them out. Hopefully I remember where this all goes back because it's gonna be a pain if I don't. But cars are like Lego. Everything only goes in one way. Ah, no force. Oh.
Hey, hey, what are you doing?
Right.
I removed random little aftermarket wires that were installed everywhere. We disconnected a bunch of the wires held into the chassis with these clips. These clips, being so old, were pretty difficult to remove. A bunch of different wires and connectors and plugs going all around the engine bay. It was a very painstaking process, but this stuff is always very satisfying. Looks so much better without that there.
Why did you win up?
Oh no. Oh, look at that, it's all one. We need to take all the wiring out, and the only way to take the wiring out is to remove the lower portion of the fuse box. So just held in by a few clips, and then we should be able to finesse it down into this small little hole. Fist size, so we need to take the fender off. Making huge progress. The engine bay is looking a whole lot cleaner. We've deleted a lot of the Hiker stuff. As you can see, a lot of the Hiker stuff is now deleted. I've decided to do as best of a job as I possibly can, and I'm removing all the brake lines, the breather lines and everything, so I'm just gonna continue doing that. This is taking a lot longer than I thought, man. We're almost done stripping the engine bay now, guys. It's looking pretty sick, as you can tell. We've taken basically everything out of this thing. Now, there are a few things that I could remove that I'm probably not gonna bother removing. Just like the strut right here, like, I am gonna take off the nuts, but I'm gonna leave the threads exposed so that I could at least paint underneath where the nut goes. Little bits like where the subframe mounts on that bracket right there, I'm not gonna be removing. Probably gonna leave some of the brake lines in there, just tape up some of the holes. I have removed the grommets though for the AC lines and the heater core lines. I will be using both heater core and AC, but that means that we can just tape that all up and we can paint everywhere, which is very ideal. All I need to do now is remove the brake booster, the lines, the master for the clutch, and then I need to remove this little bracket right here. But man, it is looking pretty good. You can see there's a little bit of surface rust underneath this panel that goes just underneath the windscreen wipers. So we're gonna have to do some sanding there, which is totally fine. And surprisingly, there's absolutely no rust whatsoever on these frame rails, which is sick. There's just a bolt there that I've gotta drill and rethread, which is kind of frustrating, but everything's looking pretty good. The garage is looking so messy now, but yeah. The garage is now an absolute mess with engine parts everywhere. It's going to be hard to put this all back together, but I sort of know where everything goes in the back of my head. We took a few more things off, removed some more wiring, took the brake lines out, took a few more brackets out, but I had to finish there because I cut myself. Alright guys, I've had to actually stop now because I've cut myself pretty bad on my pinky and this is my dominant hand. So this video is going to go up tonight, so enjoy, but thank you guys so much for watching. Huge progress is happening, and I'll see you all in the next one. Catch ya.